Another name that, maybe could potentially be in play for the Spurs at 8, depending on what they decide to do, is Cody Williams. And
Yeah.
I haven't really watched too much of him. I watched, probably like the most. I saw like some games here and there when they were on ESPN, like throughout the college season. But just like 30 minutes ago or so, I was really like, diving into his tape a little bit. And so I was just thinking about him more because me and Ethan really haven't discussed him too much. What are kind of your thoughts on Cody Williams just as a prospect? And then if you want to get into a little bit of the Spurs potential fit there, I'd love to hear that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Cody is, first of all, he's really, really young. I always have to start with that because, to be very honest, in January he was getting mocked one even most of the time. So top three. After his injury, he came back a little bit iffy. But just in general, he's very lengthy, really, really skinny. I think he's one of the few guys in combine history who's measured over 6'6", sub 180. So he is 6'6" and a half without shoes, 178. He's 4 pounds heavier than Trae Young, a popular name around your streets, I imagine. Um, so he's really, really skinny, but he's very moves very fluidly. I wouldn't say he's a powerful athlete or a very good 3-point shooter. It's kind of a lot of projection with him. I when I first walked into him and he was one through three, I thought that was ridiculous. I think he's kind of settled in like late lottery for me to like 15, 17 range. But he'd be intriguing because the Spurs are you guys are very good at like developing players, especially wings. I mean, cough cough Kawhi. Have we, Keldon Johnson's done a good job of upping his stock, even for you guys as well. So you guys have that down. So Cody, for you guys, I think he can defend. He'd be a versatile, lengthy defender, 7-foot wingspan for him. Just very versatile on that end. Offensively, if he can really knock down shots, I'm a little bit hesitant, even though the percentages are good. I tend to focus on free throw percentage, volume from three, and those two things are kind of iffy with him.
I wanted to ask you about that. Not to interrupt, but I
yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to ask you about his shooting because I know that's kind of a conundrum with him.
Um, as with a lot of the guys around where you guys are picking, I think that their shooting is pure projection. And it's a scary thing sometimes because just as quickly as, it can be right and look beautiful, it can look bad and be real bad. But if there's anything positive to say about Cody is he shot 43% last year on what was catch and shoot jumpers, shot 59% on unguarded threes. So it's most of the timing stuff. If he can get the release quicker, those things, which I think, full discrepancy, I think a jumper is probably the least of concerns it should be for an NBA prospect. As long as they have feel, I think you can not teach feel, but I think you can teach somebody how to shoot better. So, for you guys, if you guys develop him and come in with the mindset that he doesn't have to come in year one and look like a top 10 pick, I think you guys maybe 2-3 years down the road will be pretty popular because his brother Jalen Williams was not this good at 18 either. Like,
right.
Jalen was a late riser coming out of college and really, really made him a name for himself in the draft combine scene during the scrimmages. He was the best player on the floor by far there. So, and we know who he is now. So if that's any indication of, family trajectory, then, by all means, you guys should take a chance on somebody like that at 8.
All I was going to say is at 8, if it's between Cody Williams. Cody is it? Yeah, it is Cody Williams.
Yeah, you're right.
Cody Williams.
I don't know my brain fart. Cody Williams and Dalton Knecht, who's kind of the opposite of that coin flip, right? He's a guy that's 23, more of a finished prospect. Who would you put your Spurs GM hat on? Who would you rather have in that situation?
Depends who I get with that 4. I think it's fully dependent on who I get with that 4. If we're talking somebody who's also a little bit more of a projection at 4, maybe Nico, somebody like that who is, maybe not fully ready, especially with the injury and stuff, then I'm probably taking Dalton. But if I'm the Spurs and I know I'm gonna have Wemby for 3-4 cheap years and we're gonna max him as soon as he's eligible, I take the upside guy. You guys aren't or shouldn't be ready to compete next year anyways. So just take Cody. I'm a fan of Knecht's. He's definitely going to be solid, but I think you can find players around his age later in the draft with similar impact. So I I would not waste a top 8 pick if I'm San Antonio on a surefire role player. I would try to swing for upside.
Yeah, another thing about Dalton, because me and Ethan, that was just off rip. After the 4th and 8th pick, we had Rob Dillingham at 4, and we'll get into 4 here in a second, and then Dalton Knecht at 8, just to kind of shore up that wing position at the 3 and the point guard position. Just and you already know this, but for example, like we had Trey Jones starting at point guard, and me and Ethan have talked about this. We think Trey Jones can be a very serviceable backup. You know what I mean? And then we had I don't even know if you know who this is. You might know who his brother is. He was on the G League team for the Heat. Julian Champagny was starting at the 3 for us most of the year. So those are kind of in our starting lineup. You've got Devin at the 2, you got Jeremy at the 4, and Victor at the 5. And we'll kind of see, how everything plays out, maybe with the front court potentially moving forward. But as of right now on May 15th, those kind of 3 positions we feel pretty solid about, kind of moving forward. So those are kind of the 2 positions that are kind of the big ones for the Spurs. And we'll probably get into a little bit of a post and big depth too. We talked about that as well. But, that's an interesting conversation at 8, between those 2 guys, because that is a position that the, Spurs fans, at least me and Ethan, are kind of looking at. And, I saw the measurements as well for Dalton, and he ended up measuring, I think, at like 6'5". I think maybe 6'5.5", somewhere around that. So a little bit shorter than where he was listed. And another thing, my man Drew King in the comments says Cody measured 6'6.5" without shoes and a 7'1" wingspan. Yeah. And, another thing, just while we're on this Cody Williams talk, I was listening to, and I mentioned this on a different podcast, so forgive me if some of y'all listening have already heard this, but there was another Ringer podcast that I was listening to, and they were talking about how, Cody Williams might be that type of prospect who could be 2 years away from being 2 years away, if you will. And kind of like what you just described is that he may take a little bit of time, but he really could be, like you said, a potential pick and an upside pick. So yeah, I guess we kind of already talked about the conversation, how you were saying like an NBA ready guy, maybe more in Dalton coming in versus drafting on potential. And it seems like you're kind of on the side with where the Spurs are at right now, that maybe they should look more of the potential route.
Yeah. I think they should, specifically with 8, I think they should balance with 8, whatever they do with 4. I don't think you want to take 2 huge upside swings and then end up with nothing in a draft class. I know you guys are really big Risa Shea fans from what I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, and Rob fans. Rightfully so, especially with Rob. Risa Shea I'm not as high on. I think at 8 he would be ideal, but I think at 4 is too rich for me. But Rob, with like whoever you guys get at 4, at 8 it should be somebody to balance that. So that's basically kind of where I'm at, but that's just the way I view drafting in general. I don't want to swing 0 for 2. I want to at least get on base with one of them. I don't want to hit a home run either. But if I get the first one gets a double and the next one is a home run, how I like to say, we're cooking with grease.
Right.